Beyond the Hood, stories and strategies to fuel dealer growth.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Beyond the Hood with Tractor Zoom. My guest today is John Hoffmann of Atlantic and Southern Equipment. The conversation John and I have revolves around what do you do with all of your used equipment here at the end of 2024. John also talks about some bright spots that he had this year, and especially the introduction of the Fendt tractor, growing that market share, but also the double-edged sword that comes along with that and having to take in those higher priced trade-ins. What do you do with those, especially in the market that we're in right now? So without further ado, let's enter the conversation I had with John Hoffmann in Beyond the Hood. John Hoffmann, welcome to Beyond the Hood with Tractor Zoom. How you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Good. Well, I'm glad you could join us. And, you're one of the first people that I get to interview in our Used Equipment Manager series. And so, you get to be the one that kind of breaks the ice a little bit to me and tells me how good or maybe not so good this market is doing. But before we get into the details of everything we're going to talk about, do you want to just take a little moment and, give me a bit of background about yourself and your dealership, how long you've been there?
Okay. Well, my background started back in Iowa. I'm an Iowa guy, but I've lived in Georgia now for close to 30 years. Went to Iowa State, started to work for Massey Ferguson right out of college, bounced around. That's been 38 years ago. Was with AGCO for 30 years, and then the last 8 years I've been the used equipment manager at Atlantic and Southern. Our headquarters is here in Georgia, but we have dealerships in Alabama, Georgia, one in Tennessee, two in North Carolina.
Okay, good spread. And so Iowa State is actually having quite a heyday, so congratulations on that. That I don't know if your sports programs have ever been
I watched the game
strong.
Saturday. It was wild.
It was wild on the good side. I watched the Iowa game, and it was quite the opposite. So congrats to you guys. But also, AGCO is actually having a pretty good heyday, and we've seen a lot of movement out of them and work with their dealerships. And so I think there's probably some exciting things ahead for AGCO, aren't there?
There really is. There really is. Some of their most recent products and things are really helping us. They've, on the Massey brand particularly, they've always been strong in the compact and utility brands, not so much in the high horsepower, but now we've got the Fendt brand that's becoming really popular here in North America. It's really taken off for us. And, we focus on the higher horsepower equipment, larger dealers, which it fits right perfect with what we're doing.
Okay, good. And on that note right there, do you want to enlighten me and enlighten a little bit of the listeners? What do your farmers look like in your areas?
We have farmers in our areas that can be all the way from, we still get those customers that are the compact utility buyers or the landscapers, the homeowners. They work on weekends, piddling here and there. But our traditional customer base has been the higher horsepower. We sell a lot of application equipment, which in our case is the Rogator, Terragator, which has now been renamed the Fendt Rogator. But those customers generally have a lot of acres. You have to be to afford a machine like that. Or we also have a pretty good customer base with the resellers, your large corporate application companies that go out and spray for the farmers, either spread fertilizer or spray, whatever they need for pest control or fertilizer, what have you. So we have to really focus on the larger equipment. We do get into the smaller stuff, but there's just so much competition out there, in brand and out of brand too. So we have it, but it's not really something that we're really good at or focus on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good to stick to your strengths. Now, one of the big reasons why I wanted to call all the used equipment managers together is because we're sitting here in middle of October in 2024, and the whole equipment market is obviously not what it was the last couple of years. It's presenting some challenges, but I wanted to try to get a lot of perspective around what are some of the biggest challenges. And I know it's different across brands and across areas, or at least I think it might be. For you and Atlantic and Southern's area, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing right now in 2024?
Okay, the biggest challengers for our dealership, or challenges for our dealership, is kind of twofold. It's I wouldn't say it's any revelation that hasn't happened any other time over the last 35, 40 years, but we're in just that cycle where we did have a shortage of inventory. Back in 22, we had a really booming good year on used equipment. Went out and bought a lot of used equipment to resell have something for our salesmen to buy. We got into 23, and the OEMs, again, coming out of COVID, the OEMs started to release some new inventory we'd been waiting on for up to a year. Customers had ordered it. We just couldn't get it. So, we were fixing up used machines. We were buying used machines, selling used machines. It was a really good time for being a used equipment manager. I know that. When the new machines started coming in early 23, these were pre-orders in a lot of cases. So they started coming in. And again, when you buy a $500,000 application machine, you're going to trade in a pretty high dollar trade. So we got a lot of those trades, which were planned. The values on them was, pretty high, pretty good. We had agreed to a lot of the values, in a few months beforehand, before they ever arrived. But what we're facing going into 24 has been those machines that came in 23, there was a bunch of them. And so I consider those, I call them the carryover application machines into 24. But as you know, the market started to go down in used equipment. Could be interest rates, could be pricing. There's just a variety of things that created this, situation that we're in right now where the market has gone down considerably. We carried over a lot of used application machines that were higher value than what they should be right now. Now we're kind of stuck with some overvalued used equipment. And then combine that with the fact in 2024, as I mentioned, the Fendt brand has become quite popular. We are getting looks from large growers that have never looked at us before with the brands that we had, Challenger, Massey, traditional AGCO brands. The Fendt brand has really started to turn heads. We've sold a bunch of them starting a couple of years ago and into this year. Now that's great. We're getting some really good market share, good sales out there. Once again, though, when we're selling a high dollar Fendt tractor, we're taking in a pretty high dollar trade.
Right.
So a lot of the trades we may have even valued early in the year, which the market hadn't really started the dive it had been in right now. But we basically figured the deal in January. It was September before the tractors showed up, and the market of those used trades is considerably less now than it was then. So we are twofold right now. The challenges we have is the carryover application equipment, and then the newer high horsepower tractors, most of which are off brand. These are not traditional Massey Ferguson buyers. These are large other brand dealers that are trading us a lot of used other green and red tractors. So now we sit here with a bunch of inventory, which you could say is a little bit high valued.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was looking through your used equipment before we actually started this conversation, and I noticed that there was quite a bit of that off-color, higher horsepower type of equipment that's on your guys' used lots. Mm-hmm. Now, so if you had to kind of summarize it, you've got the applicator type of machines, and I think from a previous conversation we had, when you're down there, you're talking as many spreaders or probably more spreaders than you actually have sprayers, right?
Yes, that is true, and a lot of those are going to the resellers.
Okay.
The application, that sell their services for hire to the farmers that can't afford to have one.
Mm-hmm. And if you have to look forward, then you've got your applicators and you've got your larger row crop tractors. How long is it going to take you guys to wash out of this, or do you have any kind of crystal ball or estimation?
Well, normally
guesstimation?
We don't have a lot of older inventory. Our focus is nothing over 12 months, which we've been really close for the last few years. Right now, we've got some work to do before the end of the year. We're having to look at different markets. We're certainly having to look at decreased prices, decreased margins, even some losses on some machines just to move them on. The carrying costs are there. They don't get any more valuable when they sit on your lot. Although if the market picks up a little bit later in the year, I guess we are later in the year, but we can always hope. But if it picks up, hopefully we can get out from under them without too much of a a hassle or I guess, money situation where we end up upside down more so than we are. But so right now, that's really the focus that we have.
Okay, good. And that kind of, I know I had listed a question talking about the strategies that you're implementing to move inventory before the end of the year. So obviously price is the easiest and quickest lever that you can just toggle a little bit. How do you guys work with your sales staff from the used side to the sales staff to coordinate strategies? Do you have weekly meetings, or do you have systems that you're kind of pushing, whether it's spiff or top of mind priority pieces of machine? How do you guys do that?
Well, we are getting to be a pretty good sized dealership, but the nice thing is we have roughly 10 salesmen.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I probably have conversations with every one of them multiple times a day. They take a unit in on trade. They have an incentive to turn that trade within the first 9 months, and make money. Hopefully they made money on the sale of the new equipment, and then they can turn around and make money on the sale of the used equipment. If there's an opportunity before that 9 months to move it out, say I've got another brand dealer or a broker, a wholesaler, or even if I want to send it to auction, then that's my decision. It goes ahead and they get their benefits or hold back that had been held on to, and then that money's released and they're basically free of that trade. If not, if it goes over the end of 9 months, well then obviously there gets to be some penalties for them and their compensation. So we are always working. I'll have the units that we've recently taken in. We price them at what they thought that they would resell for prior to when we took them in on trade. I mean, we keep our salesmen heavily involved in the sale of the trades. I know some people have said, no, the salesman sells new. It's up to the used equipment manager to sell the used. We don't follow that rule at all. The salesman is still tied to that trade. And again, in most cases, when they're going out to get a trade, they got to want that trade. I always turn around and say, you want that trade? Do you have a customer in your area that would want something like that? I mean, if the answer is no, well, then obviously the trade value is going to go down real quick. If there's nothing on their plate, then I'm going to assume it's going to go to auction or something like that. So we do have constant communication with our salesmen. We do have some meetings the first Friday. We call it our first Friday sales call. The first Friday of every month, we have a conference call, a Teams meeting where we all get together and talk about what's going on, what some of the new things are. If we have a new program, this year especially, we've been doing a lot of, repricing equipment. Older equipment I just keep bumping the equipment down. I'm doing a lot of research this year that I've never done before with wholesalers, brokers, auction companies, looking at estimates of resale value, wholesale value, auction value, and then I'll kind of throw it into the sausage grinder and spit out a price that, okay, well, this is what the price is going to have to be, and if that doesn't work in 30 days, I'll do it again. Just keep bringing it until, I don't want to take it to auction value right away. You're going to decrease it a little bit of a time to, hopefully you can make a little bit more than that. But there will come a time where there'll be some that I hate to go to auction. I never have traditionally looked at auction as a solution, but I've started testing the waters a little bit, and it's ugly right now. But hey, it could be the solution.
Right. All right. And I've heard that sentiment from a lot of different dealers that we work with too, that it's sometimes, at least in the past, 6, 7, even, many years before the pandemic, it wasn't in their tool chest. It just wasn't part of the strategy. And at least it's coming into the conversation right now. Hey, everybody, a quick break from the show, and then we're going to get you right back to the conversation. But I wanted to take a moment to let you know how TractorZoom is partnering with all of our dealership partners to fuel their dealership growth. We're doing that with TractorZoom Pro to give people better valuations, faster access to it, and the ability to manage their inventory using AI, using large data. Even if their dealership doesn't have the capacity to develop the AI and the large data themselves, it's all there within TractorZoom Pro. And also with Anvil Pro, integrated business systems solution. You can actually cut costs by integrating solutions, not paying for all these extra one-offs, and keep people in the same solution so you're not constantly switching screens. And then you could optimize your workflows, do a lot of things with automation that technology should be able to do right now. So just 2 ways that TractorZoom is working with our dealer partners to really help them fuel their dealership growth. Okay, you can check out some links in the show notes. You can also go to tractorzoompro.com to check all that stuff out. But we'd love to at least show you all the different ways that we're helping our dealership partners. Okay, let's get back to the show. Hope you're enjoying it. Are there any positives? So, and again, there is certainly a positive with you guys expanding market share with that Fendt brand. I think that's exciting, and so that's an obvious positive. That's double-edged sword. So you've got to deal with some of the higher price trade-ins that you've got. Are there any other categories of pieces of equipment or trends that you guys are seeing in your area that are looking up?
I think there's always pockets, and again, it kind of depends on the area that the farmers or the growers are in. Tillage equipment, we're doing pretty good in, but again, of course, you need a high horsepower tractor for that too, so they kind of go hand in hand. I guess not necessarily on the used side, but I will say that there was a lot of hope thrown into these new Fendt tractors that went out there. Those customers are used to using the other colors, and they are performing excellent. Even better than we had anticipated. But we were certainly hopeful that they would do what they're advertised to do, and they certainly do. We're starting to see, from a positive standpoint, our salesmen have noticed. They've been letting me know that they're starting to get phone calls again. It's been a dead period, a hot, dry summer, we call it,
Yep.
where they're starting to get phone calls. We're starting to get sales leads coming in through the system again for inventory we have posted online. And it must really be doing something, because they're starting to mention it. Pretty much all summer, it's like, oh man, things are dead, nothing's happening. Well, we had the Sunbelt Expo last week down in Moultrie, Georgia. And not only from our salesmen, but from a lot of the customers, the farmers that came in there that we've known for years and years. And, we figured they'd pretty much just, cry the blues, which is where we all are right now. But they're starting to feel a little more positive, and I'm not sure why. I mean, the interest rates have started to help a little bit. I actually think the manufacturers have started to realize that pricing is a big issue now with used equipment. But again, or not used equipment, with new equipment. They're starting to help a little bit with used equipment. Our AGCO rep came to me last week and said, hey, we've got some new programs in place to help dealers move these trades, which is exciting for us. It's another partner out there.
Yep.
But like I was saying, the farmers themselves are starting to, at least talk a little bit positive, which again, before you actually do it, you got to start talking about it. You got to think it's coming before it's going to come. So I was really pleased to hear that too.
Ah, good. And you guys have a diversity of crops down there that not all areas of the country are blessed with. I mean, it's, granted, you still have some of the corn and the beans and the cotton that aren't doing so hot, but having a diversity diversifies your risk, gives you some upside when other things are down.
Well, it helps overall. Plus, it helps, from whether it be early in the year or late in the year, there's always something that's growing. Down in South Georgia, for example, they're growing all through the winter. So there's something happening. And, sweet corn, for example, might be a big one right now. If everybody else's, theirs is already gone. I mean, season's over, but there's still that sort of crops being harvested down in the southern part of the territory, as is cotton and peanuts. Most of the corn is out. The corn crop actually has done pretty well. The prices come back up a little bit. Beans are doing pretty well too. Again, there's some areas that, whether it be the hurricane or any other weather conditions, drought, somewhere somebody's being affected. But again, I think overall, when you piece it all together from our business standpoint, as a group, I think, our customer base is doing pretty well, which will translate into sales for us, I'm pretty sure.
Good. That's good. Okay, I've got one more quick question for you before we get into a couple of the more granular questions. But if you had to put a pin on the map, when do you think the whole used equipment market is going to hit bottom before it starts to either bottom out or rebound and come back up a little bit?
Man, you talk to so many people and they have their own different ideas. I mean, you got to, at some point, for myself, I'll just say, you know what, this is what I'm feeling. I think we're going to have a little bit of an uptick come the end of this year. As I said, the interest rates have helped a little bit. The manufacturers have slowed way down in shipping new equipment. So I think there'll be a little bit of a need for some equipment at the end of the year. There will be farmers that'll have to spend money or or pay taxes, one of the two. That's
Yep.
kind of happen every year. So I think we're going to see a little bit of an uptick. I don't think it's going to, be the change. That's not the turning point. I think we're about as close to the bottom as we are going to get. Now, some people say it's still going to go down a little bit into next year. I think if anything, it's just going to kind of hold on where we're at, and then in my mind, I'm thinking toward the end of next year, it's going to start coming back up. We're going to have a lot of adjustments between now and then as far as what we're taking on trades, how much we're allowing for trade values. But like I said, we're not out of the water yet, but I can see it from here. I really can.
Good. Well, on that slightly positive note, we had already talked about the changing interest rates of the financing conditions affecting used equipment sales, and so that's good that we're seeing a little bit of the Fed interest rate having some kind of effect, and at least with what's been rumored out there, we might see some more coming yet. And so hopefully that translates into a little bit more of a positive change. So I'm gonna pass on that question that I had planned on the interest rates and financing conditions. Now, I want to ask you about upgrade kits, and from a spraying standpoint, from planting and upgrade kits on planters, do you have to value those very often? And if you do, how do you try to value something that's got aftermarket parts bolted onto it?
It's hard on our brands that we don't sell, right? So if it's another color green that they've added a guidance, something guidance related to it, or something like that. I will say this, in most cases, and this is, I don't know if everybody has this, but in our case, when they're trading in that tractor, they're pulling it out and moving it right into the new tractor. So we're not having to value the trade. We know it's not coming with it. For things that are built in or are not being taken out, a lot of times those were actually sold with the equipment in the first place. So I'm not finding a lot of add-on kits that surprise us with the value. Now, there may be things like a boom mower. It's a tractor that goes out, DOT uses it to roadside mowing and things like that. In my mind, we're going to value the tractor. That mower, in most cases, and most of these tractors have a lot of use and are pretty well used. I'm just valuing that add-on as nothing. I'll just value the tractor. That's all we want. Because if we get it in, chances are we're just going to remove it anyway and sell the tractor as like that. But that's on the way end of the spectrum. That's a huge piece of an add-on. But other add-ons, we don't get into a lot of planters yet. I mean, we're just starting to, so I mean, we'll start facing that more as we go forward. But we don't really have a lot of the add-ons to the equipment we're selling or the equipment we're taking on trade.
Oh, that's good, and it's good to hear your perspective and what you're dealing with in the area. The fact that the farmers are removing that if they can, just to reattach it to the other piece of equipment. Okay. Now, we work with a lot of financial institutions here at TractorZoom as well as dealers, and there's a lot of talk on both sides of our aisle about leasing versus buying. And we're seeing, at least hearing across the country, that a lot more applications for leases are going up. Are you seeing the same, or do you see that in your area?
I say yes and no because, we started seeing leases pick up when we started selling the Fendt tractors. They had good leasing programs through the manufacturer. And, we actually went out and tried to convert, buyers to, well, let's try a lease instead of a traditional contract. Mainly because we want the automatic turn in 3 years. Okay, your lease is up in 3 years. We'll just take you out of that one, put you in a new one. Or better yet, we'll do it beforehand. That way we've got a little extra warranty, things like that. I don't actually see, like in the past, I think some of the financial advisors were out there. They were telling the farmers, there's a financial advantage for this or for that. I think really comes down to the lowest payment. I mean, especially right now, for those guys that just have to have a tractor because of the economy the way it is, they just want the lowest payment. If it's a lease, fine. If it's a contract, fine. It's kind of like they're kicking the can down the road just a little bit. And again, as long as their financial advisors are okay with it. I don't think there is. I think we went to leases a few years back, and we've kind of stayed there because they've been able to have the lowest payments on the, over the period of time. But I'm not seeing a lot of difference happening right now versus what has been in the last couple of years.
Huh. Well, I know our data scientist will love your answer to have you understand that. Well, we also implemented the Fendt brand about the same time, and so that's going to obviously have an effect on the uptick of leases. But also your comment that you made on the importance of lowest payment, because really in these tough times for a lot of farmers, cash is king and liquidity is so important. So that makes a good point. And nice. Okay, so I want to wrap this up a little bit with a couple last questions. Maybe less on the equipment side and more just on your work, what you've experienced. And 2024, we kind of knew this was coming. It's been a challenging year, but we also knew that the good times necessarily weren't going to last of 21, 2, and 3. Mm-hmm. Is there something this year that you've experienced or learned that you could share? So what's something new that you picked up this year?
I guess, I consider myself to have been in the industry a long time, but I guess most recently with when challenges will sometimes bring out the best in people, I've had to go out and look for, other contacts, other connections. I've joined some used equipment marketing groups, met with other dealers. We get together on calls, we get together in meetings every so often. And it's not just our brand dealers. And you can get some good ideas from the other green or the other red or the orange. Mm-hmm. But I would say what's kind of brought me into a whole new perspective is just meeting these other people, out of necessity, really. And we've got to find new ways of doing things. And I just so happened to get involved in these other groups and started talking with, other people out there in the industry that, over the years, traditionally, we wouldn't have any conversation with the competition, if you will. Now, especially if it's people that, are from the West Coast and we're on the East Coast and they've got ideas, there's no harm in it. It's just really a good flow of ideas. Some are good, some are bad. There's not a lot of confidential information that's discussed. That's not really what the point of it is. It's just we all have used equipment. And it's given me a resource in that if I'm taking in, 4 of these off-brand trades, oftentimes before I even list them online, I'll call one of these off-brand dealers that I happen to know and say, hey, you know what? You don't have any of our trades, do you? You don't have any Fendt tractors you want to trade for these? And it's been tremendous how that conversation has helped, whether it be to value the machines or whether it be working out a deal and say, okay, you take this, I'll take that. And, we're in a better position of selling what we have, and as are they. So I think that's the biggest thing for me most recently is just that network. It's been very important.
Mm-hmm. Good. And I think the pandemic might have accelerated that, or at least made the appreciation for those type of connections heighten that. Didn't really know how important it was or didn't appreciate it as much until it was taken away.
That's right.
So that's been a positive. Good. Okay. Last question for you. Any piece of advice that you've got, whether it's pertinent to what you're dealing with now or just in general, that you want to pass on?
I wouldn't. Well, I'd say right now what I want to say, and this is something that we're pushing with our own sales team, has nothing to do with used equipment necessarily. It has to do with just work life in general. But we're all in high stress jobs. We all have vacation time. If you've got it, use it. That's the biggest thing, is because right now, see with the stresses that are out there in the world, people can get really caught up in it. But, very often when we're high strung, especially on the sales team, you're out there push. Don't forget your family. Don't forget to spend your time, being with them, taking that vacation time. It ain't going to go with you. So you might as well just use it and try to calm yourself down a little bit, get a little chilled out. And, that's one thing over the years that I didn't do near enough. But now that I've got a little more wisdom in my old age, I'm like, man, why didn't I take that time? So for the young guys out there, make sure you take it. you don't want to get burnt out.
Good.
That's about all I can
Good.
offer.
Well, on that moment of Zen, I think that ties this conversation up really well. Great advice. I might actually take some myself here
There you go.
this next week or so. But John, anyways, I really appreciate you spending the time with us. Thank you for joining us on Beyond the Hood with Tractor Zoom. For our viewers and our listeners out there, make sure that you subscribe to this channel so then you'll get updates when new episodes are released. And with that, John Hoffman, thank you. And for everybody else out there, take care until next time.
Thank you very much.